Chapter 3. Right, off you go. Augustine beckoned towards the door as he spoke. They trudged away from the body as though the proverb out of sight, out of mind would kick into play as soon as they walked away. Keeping the body in their view would keep it fresh in their minds and provide the inspiration to solve the crime. But it was not like any of them could take a photo with their phone. Electra, I wanted to ask you about those shoes. Are they suitable for police work? Augustine wanted to find a way of calling her back without drawing attention to the fact she was clearly upset a few moments earlier. Gary sneered at her shoes as she walked out of the door, as though he had already decided they were not what they should be. What's wrong with the shoes, boss? Electra asked when the two of them were alone in the room. Nothing at all. I just want to know that you're okay. It's not like you get caught up in the emotion of a murder investigation. Sure, you're the human side of our team, but emotional, not your style. It's not the work, but I don't want to talk about it right now, Gus. Augustine left it at that. He had been working with Electra long enough to know when she needed some time and space. She would come back to him when she was ready to talk. It never took long, but it was a more difficult task than trying to draw blood from a stone, trying to pry something out of Electra when she wasn't ready to talk. Switch your mind back to the job in hand, Augustine. She will be all right, you know it. He walked out of the room where the murder had taken place. It was a single room, booked by John O'Toole and paid in cash, so not a great deal to go on there. The CCTV in the hotel was as grainy as it was with most businesses in the town. Money was spent putting systems in a few years ago as a deterrent rather than a means of recording and replaying crimes. The owners of the hotel decided that it would keep the kids away from the graffiti that had made its way across the side of the hotel. That, and the fact that a few cars had been broken into in the car park, were enough to prompt a small expenditure on a CCTV system that was bottom of the range and served a single purpose, trying to convince people that they would be found out if they did something they were not supposed to do, about one step up from a fake burglar alarm attached to the side of the building. The system was installed by a local company, who told the business owners there was only so much they could do for the fee they were willing to pay. 8 cameras, none on the top floor of the building, and only 2 outside. So, they opted for 1 in the car park, 1 in the entrance, and then 3 in the reception area. It was one of the sad facts of running a business that you needed to keep an eye on the customers and 1 eye on the staff members. Working in retail or hospitality in particular meant that you had hundreds, if not thousands of pounds passing through your fingertips day after day. The temptation for some of this to find its way into a pocket, bag, tucked into the shoe, or passed to a friend or family member was far too great for some. The cameras in the reception made sure that no customers could just put their hands in the till, but it also served the purpose of letting the people who could rightly have their hands in the till know that if they chose to put some of that money where it shouldn't be, then they would be caught. The biggest camera looked straight down over the reception area into the till drawer when it was open. Crime and criminal caught on the same camera at the same time. If only all the crimes in the town of Washington were as easy to solve. The final 3 cameras were installed at the entrance to the lift on the ground floor, and the first 2 floors occupied by the hotel rooms and the guests. That was it. As there was little to do in the first few minutes of the investigation, as others went out and did their job, Augustine went through to see what Gary was doing. "Boyle, what's happening?" Gary asked as he walked through the door to the main office which housed Gary, the hotel manager, and the CCTV system. From there, it was only a short hop to the reception, where 2 receptionists stood talking to each other as though nothing had happened. Gary had decided that he would speak to the manager, find out how to use the archaic CCTV system, and then ask for the receptionists one by one. Augustine could see this was a decent enough plan of action, so sat in with him as the manager was interviewed. She hadn't been at work that day, so she was not a great deal of use in terms of uncovering what had transpired, but would give a good background of the hotel and the people working there. Gary asked all the usual questions, asking for staff rotas, full names and addresses of each member of the team, as well as access details in and out of the hotel. What codes or keys are needed, who has these, whether they are changed regularly, etc. "How do the cleaners and maintenance people get into the rooms?" Gary asked the manager, while looking her up and down. Gary's past told Augustine that he was working her out as a witness, as well as working her out as a potential sexual conquest. Augustine concluded she was way out of his league. Gary had a reputation as a bit of a womanizer in the force. Augustine couldn't see what the attraction was, but was prepared to believe that Gary could be successful if he put his mind to it. But not on this occasion. The hotel manager was in her 30s, blonde, with a large chest, and legs at least as long as Augustine's, he reckoned. "They have access keys, a bit like the credit card room keys we give out to guests, but these get you in any room you like," she responded with a smile that made Augustine think twice about Gary's potential success. He sat back in his chair so he could watch what was going on. "And who gives these out?" "They can only be produced by me. I have a machine here, linked to the desk computer that produces these cards," she said as she fished into her pocket for an example card that Gary and Augustine could see. "And how many are in circulation? What happens when someone leaves?" "There are about 10 in use at the moment. The cleaning team of 5 all have one, the 2 maintenance guys, me, and then probably 2 that haven't been given back when people leave. They only last for 6 months and then expire, as far as I am aware. I think we've had 2 leavers in the last 6 months that haven't given back their cards. I can look through the staff records and let you know a list of names if you like," the manager offered. Gary was still working her out on 2 fronts. Augustine was watching him closely. Gary's success rate in interviews was high. His communication skills with the rest of the team left something to be desired. But when one-on-one with a witness or suspect, he was pretty good at cutting to the chase. Augustine watched for a few pointers, like a student watched their teacher. "I think you'd better check everything with your head office, and then we'll get a list together of the people I want to contact. Pick up the phone and make sure you're okay to give these details out. We'll get them anyway, but it's better to go through the correct channels first," Gary explained. He was right. If needed, a warrant for the details would come pretty quickly. But to have permission put the hotel manager in a safe place with her employers. She was called Sally Finch, like the bird, and Augustine thought that she would be able to fly like a bird if a weightless frame that carried nothing but the essentials of organs, flesh and bone, plus breasts. There didn't look to be an ounce of fat on her. Sally picked up the phone, and Augustine left the room. He was sure the information would start coming through from the rest of the team members, so he retired back to the conference room and set up his stuff. Laptop to record details and check anything that needed more research. Notebook to jot down items he might need to refer to later. A pen sat by the side of it. It was a Bic pen, with the 4 colours on the same one that you could click through from one to another. Black represented information, green something to check up later, and red for emotion. Augustine needed to separate these different elements of the investigation. He didn't want to present emotions as fact or vice versa. His role as lead detective was to drill down to the cold, hard facts that could stand up in court. Hunches had their place in modern police investigations, but wouldn't stand up for a second when it came to the prosecution. He hadn't found a use for the blue ink yet. A ruler to underline anything that needed that extra emphasis. Augustine hated scruffy underlined words and sentences. Part of that hatred came from his own inability to draw a straight line. He was the boy in school that nobody wanted to sit next to in art. To sit within 6 feet of Augustine in art lesson meant that you would walk away from the classroom covered in water, paint, clay, charcoal, or whatever medium they were using. His phone. Augustine sat it on the desk front and side of where he was sat. He had a tendency to miss calls because he didn't recognize the noise or vibration from his phone in his pocket. Having it on the desk so that the flashing lights were added to the noise and movement meant that there was never going to be any confusion about whether that noise was coming from his phone or elsewhere. He didn't expect the rest of the team to communicate with him by phone, as they were all situated a short walk from the conference room, but he had to consider the possibility that they might. At any rate, he was ready for whatever the rest of the day threw at him. Electra was first back to Augustine. She had spoken to the maid who went in to clean the room and found the body. Electra explained that she was absolutely distraught, to the point where most of the words coming out of her mouth were indecipherable. But the overall message was one of absolute shock and horror. She was a church-going woman, no taller than 5 foot, no younger than 55. "That kind of evil shouldn't be brought on any man," was about the only sentence she spoke clearly. The other bits of information Electra managed to glean from her were that the bed had been slept in, the bathroom had something floating in it, that she flushed away, and the window was left open a crack to let the air in. Whoever killed must have had a queasy stomach. Electra wished that the shit in the toilet was still there, so they could check who it belonged to. Any clue is a good clue. In any case, there were no traces of it around the rest of the toilet, a feat that Augustine rarely managed to achieve. "Gus, I'm sorry about earlier. It's just my latest useless boyfriend. I've kicked him out because he doesn't feel that he should contribute around the home. He works from home half the time and leaves it in a shit tip, expecting me to pick up after him. No idea where he got that idea from, but I've never cleaned up his crap. Suppose he'll go back home and get Mummy to tidy up after him," Electra explained. "Not a problem. Just know that I'm always here for you. I've learned when to give you a bit of time, and when to push you for more. I think this is a time for the latter of those two." "No need. I'm going to tell you. He wasn't much at all in bed. I'm not giving details. I know what you men are like, but I'm not sure he knew my arse from my elbow, and I'd much rather he spent time around my elbow. The time was right for him to move on, or move backwards, actually. Anyway, there is no reason for me to put up with crap from anyone." "We all carry a certain degree of crap with us, Electra. Even people as close as possible to perfect, like you and me. We all have to decide what bits we can put up with and what bits we just can't. It seems to me like you don't put up with anything." "I know, Gus, but there is only so much I can take." "I know. I'm just suggesting that your tolerance level is lower than most.